Thanks so much for organizing this, Hannah. It's really nice to be a part of this symposium. So I want to talk about what maybe we could distinguish as 3 different kinds of reasoning and how they support different kinds of action. One kind of reasoning supports and allows us to regulate my own actions. Another kind of reasoning, where I'm thinking about your reasons, supports maybe joint action. And another kind, again, that I'm going to call joint ideation, allows us to start tapping into what we could call our reasons, and maybe emerges much later. And what's nice to see is that I think all the results are going in the same way that have been discussed so far, so that's really interesting. What do we mean by reasoning, by reflective reasoning? Well, Christine Korsgaard suggests that a rational animal is at least sometimes aware of the grounds of her beliefs and actions, and this consciousness puts her in a position to evaluate those grounds and decide whether or not they count as good reasons to act and to believe in the ways that tempt her to act and to believe. So there's 2 things I think going on here. One is that a reflective reasoning agent can keep track of the reasons they've done things or believe things, and they can also evaluate them. So to paraphrase Giacomo Mellis, who may disagree with this paraphrase, I think the ability is to keep track of and evaluate the reasons for why you've done something. And we can distinguish this from merely rational action. So a dog, maybe dogs can do reflective reasoning too, but let's say a dog goes and looks for its dinner in a dinner bowl, and it has a very good reason for looking for its dinner there, but it doesn't necessarily stop and think about what that reason was or evaluate whether it was a good reason on this particular occasion and so on. So we can distinguish reflective reasoning from merely rational action. Okay, so solitary action and our ability to reflect on our own reasons. Well, Descartes was obviously a fan of solitary reasoning, and he thought that maybe you could use this to provide a foundation for the whole of science. Let's call this Cartesian reasoning. It's introspective. It doesn't necessarily involve anybody else. There's no essential role for somebody else. For example, last night I was passing by a shop and I saw something interesting in the window, and I went into the shop, and then I forgot what I'd seen in the window and thought, why did I just come in here? And I went back outside to the window and I thought, oh, right, that's why I came in. So if you've ever done that, if you've ever been in that situation, you're able to think about your reasons for your own actions and evaluate them. Was that actually a good reason for doing this? So here's a task that we designed to try to capture whether children and apes can engage in this kind of reasoning. So first, children and apes see evidence that of 2 boxes, but there's a big grape in the right, let's say, and a little grape in the left. And they make a choice, big grape, and then the boxes are rotated, and due to the use of magnifying lenses, it now appears that the big grape is on the left. And they could just change their choice, but we supposed that if they're keeping track of the reason that they picked the box on the left in the first place, they might say, hang on, I previously had evidence that the grape was on the other side, so I should suspend my belief at this point and look for more information before making a decision. Here is Kara, who is in the contradictory condition. Don't have time to show the consistent condition. She picks the box on the right first. Now the boxes are rotated. Oh, okay. So got to double check everything. And okay, yes, it's the right choice. So she sees from the top, double checks the evidence. So here, remarkably, apes in our study did significantly better than 3-year-old children. 5-year-old children were not different from apes, but apes were significantly better than 3-year-old children. And okay, here's the question, why is this reasoning? Why do we want to say this is reasoning? Well, because they're keeping track of the evidence, they've kept in mind the previous evidence, the previous reason for why they made a choice, and they've realized that I had a reason before for making the opposite choice. Now I have a reason for making this choice, so I have conflicting reasons. So it suggests like they're keeping track of the reasons, and they check the evidence, so they're evaluating the evidence. They stand up and double check. So keeping track of and double checking seem like evidence for tracking and evaluating. So then we have joint action, and in these scenarios, maybe something different is going on. I'm not just thinking about my own reasons, I'm thinking about somebody else's reasons. So Michael Tomasello has suggested that maybe there was a historic period of obligatory collaboration where all of the rabbits were dead because of an ice age, let's say. There were only woolly mammoths, and now we have to hunt woolly mammoths. If we can't, we're not going to survive. So there is pressure on us to have adaptations for collaboration and joint action to be selected for. And we can see all sorts of very, very early developing biological, it would appear, features of our behavior that seems to support this. So gaze following from 3 months, pointing apparently uniquely to humans from about 9 months, set us up for sharing information. engaging in joint attention to concrete objects, looking back to see if the other person is watching, recognizing that you're both tracking the same thing, to concrete objects, like apples and oranges and chairs and games, maybe. And on the heel of this engaging in joint attention to concrete objects, the development of perspective taking. I can recognize that maybe you have conflicting attitudes to apples to my own. I think apples are great, but now I've interacted with you around apples and I realize, wow, you actually don't like apples. So we have different preferences. Maybe I learned that you have different visual perspectives on the world. You can see something that I can't, which is also facilitated by joint attention and emerges in the context of joint attention. And maybe also reasons. When we engage around objects and we see that somebody's behaving in a surprising way, we start realizing that maybe they have reasons that I don't have. So the second task in that paper can be thought of as a way to tap into this question of, do young children and apes keep track of others' reasons? So first, two participants see a grape deposited in one of two boxes. So they both see the grape openly deposited in one of two boxes. Then the boxes are pushed towards one participant who now makes, in the test condition, a surprising choice, because we had a hole in the bottom of the box and we snuck the grape in there, and there was actually already a grape hidden in the other one. So we turned the boxes towards that participant. They make a surprising choice. And now the boxes are pushed back to the target participant, and the question is, does the surprising action of the other person motivate the target to now double-check their own evidence? So am I being responsive to apparently your reasons for doing something surprising? And here's a 5-year-old in the children's version, and the experimenter puts the ball in the box closer to us, and the stooge makes a surprising choice. Okay. And the target participant double checks before acting. And I like the detail here that surprising choice, and then the target participant is about to choose the box where the marble apparently went in. He's got his arm up, he's ready to pick, and then he thinks, oh no, hang on, wait, I should double check. And sure enough, it's in the surprising alternative location. So here you find the opposite, that 3-year-old children are extremely sensitive to this scenario, and significantly more sensitive to this scenario than they were to the scenario where they had previous conflicting evidence themselves. So I think that's pretty striking, that they're more sensitive to somebody disagreeing with them, at least in this paradigm, than to conflicting evidence that they saw themselves just a few seconds earlier. Whereas apes, you find the opposite effect. Apes were very sensitive to conflicting evidence they saw themselves, but don't seem to respond to their partner making a conflicting choice when they've already made or had evidence for the opposite location themselves. So in this case, we can again ask, well, where are the reasons? Why are we talking about reasoning here? Well, in this case, we say maybe that we are acting on the reasons that we take the others to have. So we're making a decision based on our assumption that somebody else is acting for a good reason. In this case, I'm double checking my evidence because I think you must have a good reason for picking the opposite location. And here's another task that gives a similar result for 3-year-old children. So we ask children and a puppet to together go and find a collection of objects on a shopping list in a series of boxes around a table. For example, find 3 silver bells. There's 2 boxes, one of them has 4 silver bells, one has 3. Or find the fox, one box has a fox, one box has a squirrel. And they look in the boxes, and in some trials, the child looks in the box and then makes a choice, and then the puppet looks in the same boxes and says, no, that can't be right, it's in the other box, surely. And now the experimenter says, which box do you want? And the child has the opportunity to spontaneously go back and double check the evidence. And they do, early as 3 years of age, and there's no age difference here. And interestingly, this is not predicted by the false belief tasks, so their theory of mind skills don't seem to predict this big significant difference between the 3-year-olds and the 5-year-olds on theory of mind skills in our sample, but no interaction with the task. So, okay, let's call this maybe inferential reasoning. I'm inferring a reason that's going on behind your actions. What it does is let us act together spontaneously around some kind of a concrete object that we're both paying joint attention to, a task. But what it doesn't do is, suppose those 3 guys hunting the woolly mammoth have to come up with a plan of how they're going to chase the woolly mammoth before it's arrived. Can they do that if they just have the ability to infer somebody else's reasons on the basis of their actions, or does something else have to happen? And so that brings us to this third idea, that there's a stage where we get to where we engage in joint ideation, where maybe with the linguistic skills, particular level of linguistic skills, we can start talking about one of those reasons for doing something and come up with a plan in advance. So as we all know, around 3 or 4 years, children start passing explicit false belief tasks. And one way of thinking of this is to suppose that, you know, if I say that Sally is going to look in the appropriate place, I'm imagining the world from Sally's point of view as being different from my own. But the studies we just showed seem to suggest that they can already do this. They can already imagine how the world looks differently from somebody else's point of view. So another way of thinking about what's going on here is not that they're imagining the world from somebody else's point of view, but they're recognizing that she has a different attitude to a belief to what I do. I think the claim that ball is in the box is true, but she thinks the same claim is false. We have different attitudes to a hypothesis or a belief or a claim about the world. And some evidence that supports this is that one strong predictor of passing these explicit false belief tasks is competence with sentential complement clauses. So when children acquire the ability to say something not just like the ball is in the box, but Mary thinks the ball is in the box, but I don't think that's true. This kind of discourse strongly predicts performance in the false belief tasks. And so does, I don't know if this has been tested, but at the same time, endogenous demonstratives emerge in children's discourse. So you could say, yeah, Mary thinks the ball is in the box, but I don't think that's true. The word "that" in that construction doesn't refer to the ball or the box, it refers to the claim that the ball is in the box. Because it's true, it's only a claim can be true or false, not a ball or a box. One way you could describe this is that what's happening is at a certain stage we start paying joint attention to and exchanging attitudes to ideas. For example, one person could say, let's go for a picnic. The other person can say, that's a great idea. They're not referring to a beach or a sandwich. They're referring to the proposal to go for a picnic. That's a great idea. Let's go to the beach. That sounds good. They can also exchange attitudes to the plan. That's a great idea. The other person says, that's a terrible idea. And the plan that emerges in the end, picnic, beach, strand, is something that they've constructed together. And so this is now our plan. It's not something either one of them came up with on their own. And you can construct this kind of story for beliefs. I think that there's a banana in the box. What do you think? I don't think that's true. Rules. Here are some rules for a game. Will we play it like this? No, those are not good rules. Let's change them. Or reasons. Here's one way of making an arrow. I wrap the sinew around the shaft in order to do this. I don't think that's a good reason for putting it together this way. Let's do it differently. Generally, you could say mental contents. Plans, reasons, rules, beliefs. And so we wanted to create a task to allow us to disentangle joint action from the kind of action that would require this kind of joint ideation. So in our first task, we got children to play a little game where they have to collaborate on running a toy train around a track. And the track has gaps in it. As you can see, there's 3 little gaps in the train. One child has a piece of track that they can put in the gap before the other child rolls the train over the gap. And so one child's holding the engine, the other child is holding the piece of track. And if they succeed in the joint action, this means that the child with the track put the track in place before the other child rolled the train over, and the child with the train waited for the child with the track to put it down before they rolled over. So each child has to be paying attention to what the other one is doing. But it doesn't require any kind of advanced planning. But it is clearly, I think, a clear case of a joint collaborative action. And compare this to what we call joint ideation, which is, in this case, there are 2 train sets, and first they have to decide which train set we're going to play with. There's the red train set and the blue train set. If they decide to play with the blue train set, then they each go away to separate locations and come back with the appropriate parts matching train and track for the blue set. If they decide to play with the red set, they each go away to separate locations and come back with matching parts for the red set. So they have to come up with a plan before they engage in the joint action. And now what we find is there is a big effect of age and also theory of mind. So the 3-year-olds had no problem with joint action, but had a big problem coordinating on the plan, whereas the 5-year-olds were the other way around. Well, they could do both. Okay, so you could call this discursive reasoning. Depends on joint attention to ideas via language, allows joint planning. And maybe, it allows the cultural evolution of reasoning itself. It's a longer talk because I have 30 seconds left. So here are 3 ways of reasoning. Cartesian, whose reasons are at stake? My own. What kind of action does it support? Solo action. Apes seem to be pretty good at this. 3-year-olds, not in our study, but maybe the evidence that you guys are presenting suggests that actually this is coming online earlier. And then at the bottom level, discursive reasoning, where we can actually decide by examining one another's reasons and plans through language to engage in a particular kind of action, and then go and independently execute that action and come back later with a woolly mammoth, I suppose. Okay, so thanks to everybody, and I'll end there.